Hi, everyone. Good morning. Happy Saturday. Happy New Year. Welcome to our first class in 2022 with Charlotte Canner from Our Water, Our World. She'll be talking about healthy soil for a healthy garden. If you've joined us before on webinars, you know that we've talked about soil before. And if there's any message that we can send very clearly, it's that soil is super critical for a healthy garden. And so it's important to revisit this topic back as much as possible. There's always something new to learn. And so we're really excited to have Charlotte here again. She's a soil expert. And then also it's a bit of a bonus pack because Suzanne is also here, who, if you've joined us before, she also is with Our Water, Our World, and she's here to help me answer any questions. We really want to be sure to address your questions as much as possible. I do have a poll going on. If you could take a moment and pop over into the poll to fill out, let me launch it. I always forget. Yeah, if you could pop over and fill out the poll, there's some information we'd like to gather before the presentation. I do want to talk a little bit about some upcoming classes. I'm really excited about the lineup for the year so far. We have up through February right now on the website, and I have March done too, and that will be up on the website shortly. The next few classes, well, Suzanne will be here Wednesday, and she'll be talking about eco-friendly disease management. Also something that's very important to get ahead of early in the season. And so that's going to be really good information. And then Seed Starting 101 on January 15th with Dan Alexander at 10 a.m. What to do in your garden, January 19th at 5 p.m. with Shannon Fitzpatrick, who if you've joined us before, you might also remember her. And then I'm really excited about the class after that. It's how to make seed balls. And the class is geared to teaching adults how to work with kids to make seed balls. So I think it's super fun. Actually, I want to know how to make them too. So it's kind of like, I don't know, kids big and small. So it'd be really good for, teachers, counselors, whatnot, parents. It's a good winter activity. And that's January 22nd at 10 a.m. Okay. Oh, if you have any questions, feel free to feed them into the Q&A portion. Like I said, Suzanne and I will both be going through them, and we'll filter them for Charlotte. We're going to reserve, we might take a couple questions here and there during the presentation, but we're going to reserve the majority of the questions towards the end of the presentation. All right, let's see the poll really quick. So 65% have joined a webinar before, so 35% first time. So welcome everyone. Most heard about this through email. 75% consider themselves intermediate gardeners. 6% advanced, just here to geek out for an hour, and 19% beginners, which we love because we've baby gardeners. We're so happy to have you here. We're so excited, everyone. And then, have you heard of OWOW before? 66% have not. So glad that you're joining us. You can learn about this incredible program. And have you heard of integrated pest management before, IPM? And that's 50-50. So good, this is a good crew. What else? Majority from Contra Costa, 44%. And I don't know why it's always so weird to look at the poll. Is that I think that's the last question. All right, awesome. Thank you very much, Charlotte. I'm really looking forward to your presentation. And Suzanne, I'm very thankful that you're here to help as well with questions. I'm just going to turn it over to you. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Jen. We so appreciate Slow hosting these webinars. We're just really grateful to have all of you here and to share with you my favorite subject, soil. And I also want to wish everyone a happy new year. Hope everyone is healthy and starting their year off right. Well, you're here, so you're obviously starting the year off right, learning about soil. I also want to do a quick thank you to the sponsors of this program, the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission, the Contra Costa Clean Water Program, and the Marin County-wide Stormwater Pollution Prevention Program. All right, let's dive in. So our agenda today, welcome, that's done. We're going to learn about what the Our Water, Our World program is. We'll talk a little bit about watersheds. I will give you a brief introduction to integrated pest management, but that will tie into the rest of the program, learning about soil, what is healthy soil and what it can do to your garden, why it's so important, and then how do we build our soil and make our soil healthy. And then then we'll have some online resources for you and Q&A at the end. And as Jen mentioned, feel free to drop questions in the Q&A. So first, what is the Our Water, Our World program? It is a program designed to bring awareness between pesticides and water quality and provide pest problem solving solutions. We work with retailers in like 23 counties, I think, in California, over 200 hardware stores and nurseries. We provide physical fact sheets, information like the rack on the left, in the photo in the left. Those racks are found in many of the stores that we work in. That is information for you to take on many common topics: ants, aphids, how to grow beautiful roses, deal with rats, all kinds of topics. All of that information is also on our website, ourwaterourworld.org. Some stores you might also see some QR codes. You can easily scan those codes and will bring you directly to that fact sheet on your phone. Also in the stores, many stores will also have these blue tags on the shelf, like the photo in the middle. Those tags highlight the eco-friendly products on the shelf. And a list of those eco-friendly products are also on our website. And so we are all about clean water at Our Water, Our World. We want to bring the connection between what we do out in our yards and on the street, anywhere around the home, and show you how it connects to our waterways. If you're in the Bay Area, you live in the San Francisco Bay Watershed. And this watershed is a massive watershed. Half of all the water that lands on California, either in rain or snow, drains into the San Francisco Bay. And what we want to do is make sure that everyone understands. So what we're doing outside has a direct line to the bay. We want to keep the bay and all waterways that lead to it as healthy as possible. In most counties in the Bay Area, water that enters the storm drain at the street level goes directly to a creek, river, and other waterway without going to the waste treatment plant. So that's debris, plastic waste, face masks. I'm sure we've seen those on the street, pet waste, pesticides, fertilizers, any kind of soaps and cleaners that we use on our cars, motor oil, things like that. Everything that hits the ground will make its way to the storm drain with irrigation or rain, and then directly to a waterway. If we are using products in our homes, most of the time the water that goes through a drain in our home will go to a water treatment plant, but pesticides are not removed at water treatment plants. So we want to make sure that all pesticides are kept out of the waterway, outdoors and indoors, by bringing them to a household hazardous waste facility. So a quick intro to integrated pest management and a review for some of you, for half of you, I guess. So integrated pest management, it's really a decision-making process, and it's looking at the problem, or it's looking at your garden, your home as a system, as a whole, and kind of taking a step back from the immediate problem. So it asks questions. What is the problem at hand? We see a bug on a plant. Instead of reaching immediately for a spray or something, we're going to take a step back and ask a few questions. We're going to ask, what is it? Is it a good bug or a bad bug? Can we live with it? That's a really big question we want to ask ourselves. If it's causing a little damage here and there, but our plant is still thriving, maybe we can let it go. If there's just a couple of ants crawling in our home, we can wipe them up quickly. We don't have to reach for a chemical to deal with them. So we want to evaluate how big the problem is and if we can live with it or if we have to take action. Also, part of integrated pest management is prevention. That's a big thing. So that's creating a garden that promotes diversity and has healthy plants so that pests will be less likely to cause problems, or using certain physical tools, barriers in your home or in the garden to prevent deer, rodents, things like that from coming in. Prevention can look like a lot of different things. And then identification is really important in IPM. We want to make sure we know what we're looking at. A lot of problems on our plants can look like one thing, but maybe they're just a watering issue, or some bugs look like bad pest bugs, but they're actually the good beneficial insects. So we really want to know what we're looking at. Once we decide we can't live with the problem, we want to take action. There are 4 action steps in integrated pest management. They're called controls. Cultural controls, this is what we're going to talk about mostly today. So it's bolstering the health of the garden, creating healthy plants, a healthy environment. That's going to automatically reduce the amount of pests. Mechanical controls are physical tools, barriers, traps, things that we can use in the garden and the home to keep pests away. Biological controls are really understanding the ecosystem and using other organisms to manage our pests. So that could be, it's usually beneficial insects, ladybugs, lacewings, things like that, but it could also be encouraging birds into the garden to eat those pests as well. Understanding that other wildlife does does do some pest control for us, so we want to encourage that as well. And then lastly is chemical controls, and this would be pesticides. In IPM, we always use pesticides as a last resort. We use the most eco-friendly as possible. We use it as minimally as possible. We always read the label and spray very carefully. And sometimes people don't go as far as chemical controls. If a plant is just not having success and we've tried all the other types of controls, you don't want to use chemicals, it's okay. You can just give yourself permission to remove that plant. And if you want to learn more about integrated pest management and all of these steps, there are other, we've done past webinars going more in depth on integrated pest management, and they are on the SLOAT website. So what we're going to talk about today is those cultural controls and kind of prevention as well. Those are very similar. Because when you increase the health of your soil, you're automatically reducing pest problems. Healthy soil will lead to healthy plants and less pests, and I will explain how. But before we dig in, I want to just give a quick overview, a little bit more about soil. So what is soil made out of? On the left here, soil components, it is made out of 25% air, 25% water, about 45% mineral particles, and about 5% organic matter. And that organic matter is decomposing plants, worms, bugs, fungus. Things are both living and dead that were once alive in the soil. And that's 5% is really just an estimate of pretty good soil. That number can go up to 10, 15, even 20% with really, really rich soil. After 20%, the benefits of the organic matter kind of plateau or go down. So we want to keep it around that 5 to 10, even 15%. And then soil texture. This is maybe you've gotten the question, what kind of soil do you have? This would be the answer to that. So you might have sandy soil if you live where I live, where also Sloat on Sloat Boulevard is. It's the western half of San Francisco. We used to be dunes out here, so we all have very sandy soil. That's large particles. You can see the particles. You can also see the air and water pores are very large, so air and water can infiltrate very easily and quickly. That also means that water rushes through more quickly and isn't held in the soil very long also. On the other end of the spectrum, you might have clay soil. Clay is made of tiny microscopic particles, tightly packed together with very little pore spaces between them. So water really has trouble infiltrating, and you might have pooling when you water or when it rains. Silt is somewhere in the middle, medium-sized particles and pore spaces. And now you can't change the type of soil you have unless you chuck in new soil, which I don't recommend. You'll always have sandy soil. Well, you might also have a mix of them. No one has like one. It's very rare to have only one. You probably have a mix of them, but one could be more sandy or more clay. You can't change your soil texture, but what you can do is you can change your soil structure. So soil structure is how all those soil components are put together. And that picture on the right shows really good soil structure, where you can see the particles, the mineral particles and organic matter clumped together. They're nice and sticky, they're holding together. But there's also pore spaces for roots, worms, invertebrates, bacteria, everything, fungus to move around in the soil. So why is healthy soil so important for a healthy garden? There's a few reasons. Healthy soil has high levels of organic matter, that 5 to 15% organic matter. And that's important because your plants are getting their food from that decomposing organic matter. Healthy soil is also full of life, bacteria, fungus, and vertebrates moving around. And that life is key to having healthy plants and healthy garden, because those organisms actually eat the material, the decomposing organic matter, or the organic matter, excuse me, in the soil. They are the decomposers. They're eating it, they're processing it, and then they're transforming it into a form that's going to be easy for your plants to take up. So plants can't just eat that nutrient, eat the decomposing plant matter itself. It needs the worms and the fungus and the bacteria and all the other microbes in the soil to break it down into a form that they can use. And that picture on the bottom right is just showing the mycelium or mycorrhizal fungi network, that white webby fungus that you might see in your soil, really healthy soil. That creates a huge network. It really adds an extension to your plant roots. The mycorrhizal fungi will lock into plant roots and extend them so that it will give your plant access to more nutrients, more water, more things that it needs further away. So we really want to nurture the life in the soil and make sure we have high levels of organic matter to give your plants consistent food throughout the year. Healthy soil is also really important for having efficient watering, especially in a place like California, where water is not consistent. The best thing we can do is really focus on our soil health, because, as I'll say, good soil structure. So we're going to basically, our goal is to turn our soil into a sponge, and healthy soil will act like a sponge. So instead of, so it can hold, it'll allow water to infiltrate and it will hold it there. So good soil structure, as I said 2 slides ago, it's sticky, gooey, not too crumbly, but it's loose. It has pore spaces for water and air to infiltrate. You can get that by adding organic material to your soil, compost specifically. I will talk about compost a little more in just a couple slides. But if we can make that good soil structure, that's going to help with water infiltration. So it's going to open up those clay particles and allow water to infiltrate, and it's going to glue together those sandy particles to hold water better, but still allow for infiltration. So as you can see in the top right picture, water moves through different soils differently. Sand, it really just rushes through. Clay, it kind of pools and sinks slowly. We want to be aware of that when we're watering. We want to avoid that bottom right picture of pooling, because that's going to be detrimental to our plant's health. So when you add organic matter, you're really helping, you're changing that soil structure to be better for water infiltration and percolation, to really turn your soil into a sponge. And then healthy soil is going to be better for your plant health and therefore lead to less pests and diseases. So, and this is because when your plants have consistent food and water, so there's life in the soil, breaking down those nutrients, that organic matter, feeding them to your plants over time, your soil is holding on to that water, as much water as possible, to give it to your plants over time into the dry months. You're going to have consistent, that water is going to be, the plants are going to get consistent food and water. They're going to be less stressed out. Plants do get stressed from lack of nutrients, lack of water, and other reasons can cause plants to be stressed. But overall, this is going to make them healthier. Healthy plants are less attractive to pests. And if there are pests in the garden, healthy plants can defend against infestations better than weakened or stressed plants. Similar to our bodies, when we're weak and we're stressed, we're more susceptible to illness. But when we're healthy and we're taking care of ourselves, we're going to be able to fight off any infections that come along, hopefully. So how do we build our healthy soil? I already talked about some of this. We're going to use compost, and I'll go into that a little bit more. We're definitely going to use compost. We're going to use organic fertilizers. We're going to protect the soil with mulch or other, or more plants. So we really just want to protect the soil. We want to keep living roots in the soil as long as possible. We're going to allow for water infiltration by not, putting concrete over our backyards and not allow any water to get in. We're going to avoid pesticides because that can harm all the life in the soil. We're going to do everything we can to support life and diversity both above and below the soil. So first, compost, my favorite subject. Compost is the organic matter that has been eaten, decomposed by bacteria, fungus, microbes, worms, and other decomposers. So it's the final product. It's not the food cuttings that you put into the bin. It's the product that comes out of the bin. And what compost can do for your soil, as I said, it can improve your soil structure. It can glue the sandy particles together to create more of a sticky soil. It can open up the pore spaces between clay particles to allow water and air to infiltrate. So it's really improving the soil structure. It increases water retention in the soil. Compost can hold 5 times its weight in water. So the more, when you have really compost rich soil, you're going to have a lot more water holding capacity. It increases the microbiology in the soil. Compost is super dense in microbes because it's all material being eaten by them. So when you're adding the compost to your soil, it's going to increase the microbiology in the soil. Compost can balance pH levels. So if you have alkaline or acid soil, it can balance that out. It recycles nutrients. So the nutrients that you are growing in your garden can be put into a compost, old plants, old veggies, things that you don't need anymore can go into your compost pile and then come right back into your garden. It And because of this, it will reduce the need for chemical fertilizers and pesticides. We don't need to fertilize as much with compost. Some plants still do need specific types of fertilizer, but it's really adding those nutrients back to the soil. And because you're going to have healthier plants, you're going to hopefully need fewer pesticides. Compost does also have the ability to fight pathogens and bad bacteria in the soil, and that is because of the high levels of microbiology and diversity of microbiology in the soil. So how to use compost, just really quickly, there's a few ways you can do it. For preparing new beds, which you might be doing this spring, you want to add in 1 to 2 inches of compost to the top of the bed and then gently mix it in. You don't need to do a huge mixing. You don't want to disturb the soil that much, but you can mix it into the top few inches of the soil. It is a good idea to add compost to your garden beds 1 to 2 weeks before you start planting. Just gives the soil an opportunity to really increase the microbiology and soil, get that fungus growing already and ready for your plants. You have existing plants, you can also just top dress. That means just put the compost on the top layer of the soil. It can be just right on top or maybe under a layer of mulch. And then you can either just leave it there, water it in, or gently dig it into the top inch or so of the soil. You do want to make sure when you are putting anything around plants, you keep that crown of the plant, the point where the plant meets the stem meets the soil. You want to keep that clear. You don't want mulch or compost crowding that, because that can invite diseases. You can also make compost tea out of either worm or backyard compost. Compost tea is kind of exactly what it sounds like. You know, you can, it's like water and compost mixed together, or a bag or a sock of compost soaked, steeped in some water. And that tea can be used as a soil inoculation. So really increase the microbiology in the soil, you can just water it into your soil. You can use it as a liquid fertilizer, give it that quick jolt of, or that nice good nutrients in water form, which will be helpful for your plants, or as a foliar spray. That's a spray on the leaves of the plant that can be used sometimes as, I mean, it offers health benefits to your plant, but also can be used as a pesticide prevention. It sometimes can repel pests. And then we're also going to use organic fertilizers when needed, and specifically organic fertilizers. So what's an organic fertilizer? It's fertilizer derived from organic matter, such as compost, or also mushrooms, manure, kelp, bone meal, blood meal. It's not derived from fossil fuels, which some synthetic fertilizers are. They tend to have lower NPK numbers. So those 3 numbers on the front of the container, that's nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. That's those 3 numbers. They tend to be lower when you're working with organic fertilizer. That's not a bad thing. It just means that it's gonna, we'll talk about this, it's just gonna provide, it's not high intensity, and it's gonna provide sustained energy for your plants. Also, because organic fertilizer is made out of natural organic material, it's going to contain micronutrients. So all those micronutrients that were already found in kelp are going to go into your fertilizer. So your plants are going to get a wider range of nutrients. They don't just need NPK, they need a lot of different things. So you're providing much more nutrition for them when you use an organic fertilizer. And organic fertilizers are released slowly to your plants. It's not an injection of nitrogen to give your plants super fast growing. We don't want that. We want slow release. We want sustainable growth so that your plants can be hardy and grow at the speed that they're ready to. So just a quick comparison between organic versus synthetic. Organic fertilizer feeds soil microbiology, whereas synthetic fertilizer feeds the plant, which sounds like better, but what you do want is to feed the soil. You want to provide food for that microbiology, which is then going to process that material and feed it to the plant when the plant wants it, as opposed to feeding the plant directly. That's really like giving it an injection, or sometimes I compare it to like drinking a Red Bull. It's a really fast amount of energy when the plant didn't want it and wasn't ready for it, and it can cause some problems. Organic fertilizers increases soil health. It prevents growth spurts that we don't want, and it's sustainable food for plants. It won't run off into local waterways because it's going to stay in the soil. And if it does run off into local waterways, it will break down in the water easily and not cause problems. It won't burn the plant. It's almost impossible to over fertilize with organic fertilizer. Over time, it is more economical. On the shelf, it might look a little bit more expensive versus the synthetic, but over time, you're going to need to use less. So you won't need to buy more boxes, and your plants won't be dependent on it. With synthetic fertilizers, plants tend to be dependent on it because it's that food, that injection that they're getting. So you don't have to be reliant on it as much. And again, organic fertilizer comes from natural organic materials or renewable materials, byproducts of other processes. Synthetic fertilizers come from manufactured products and tend to be made out of fossil fuels. And synthetic fertilizers, they stimulate new growth, which can attract pests. Fast new growth, which can attract pests. It causes stress as well. And synthetic fertilizers can also be high in salts, which can cause damage to your soil. And if they do run off into waterways, they can cause problems like algae blooms and other contamination. It's just a quick picture reminding you organic fertilizers feed the soil and the organic matter in the microbes in the soil, where chemical fertilizers just feed the plant and make the plant reliant on it. Mulch is another way we can create healthy soil and protect our soil. So what is mulch? It's really any material spreading over the soil surface as a covering. It can be made of many different things. This first section, bark, wood chips, leaves, lawn clippings, straw, newspaper, that's all natural materials. That's going to give the most benefit to your plants. You can also use oyster shells, gravel, landscape fabric, and rubber. Those are all other forms of mulch, and there's many more options to this as well. Those do provide some benefits, but definitely not as many benefits as the more organic materials. So what can mulch do for you? It protects the soil. Soil really likes to be covered. It doesn't like to lay bare. So we really want to cover it in whatever way possible. Mulch is a great option. So it protects the soil from, harsh wind, sun, heavy rains, footsteps, driving on it, things like that. It's a layer of protection. It conserves water by reducing evaporation. Again, it's like a nice layer on top of the soil, so it keeps that water into the soil more. It does improve water infiltration, so it allows water to enter the soil a lot easier instead of pooling or washing off. It does keep the soil cooler in the summer and warmer in the winter. It's a little blanket of insulation. As organic mulches break down, they feed the soil organisms. And what I'm sure you're interested to hear now, mulch can also keep weeds from sprouting and growing. So it's also a great way to prevent weeds in the garden. It also can create habitat for beneficial insects. And as I said, it reduces soil compaction and erosion. So it's again that protective layer. So walking on it or wind going across it will keep that soil in place. Sheet mulching is a great way to get to do a lot of things. So you could get rid of a lawn with sheet mulching. It also is a great way to smother a large area of weeds. If you have an area that you just aren't planting in yet, but it's always weedy and you want to get rid of them, sheet mulching is a great way to do that. It also is a great way to regenerate soil. If you have a big empty lot and your soil is not so good right now, sheet mulching is a great low energy, low physical activity way to really help build that soil. So, and I apologize, I didn't say what sheet mulching is. It's layering lots of cardboard on the soil surface. So 3-4 layers of cardboard on top overlapping, and then adding mulch on top of that, 3 to 4 inches of mulch on top. You can also put compost. If you're regenerating soil in a bare lot, I recommend putting compost down first, then the cardboard, then the mulch. Compost can also be put on top of the cardboard as well. And it doesn't need to be added at all, but it will add that extra boost again of organic material, microbiology to help really build that soil. Sheet mulching is a great way to defend against tough weeds. So if you know you have a lot of weeds in an area, you could put down that cardboard first before those weeds even germinate. And then as the cardboard, the compost, the mulch breaks down over time, it's going to feed the soil. So if you are getting rid of a lawn and you want to try sheet mulching, you can leave that lawn in place. You don't have to dig it up, don't have to remove it. Just mow it a little bit. Cut away from the edges of the borders of that lawn. Make sure if you have any sprinkler heads or irrigation, you mark where those are so you don't smother those by accident. Layer down cardboard. They come in rolls. Cardboard comes in rolls like in that picture, or you can just get some from a neighbor. I'm sure lots of people always have excess cardboard. And then top with 3 inches of mulch or compost and mulch. And this little diagram at the bottom will show you a little bit more. So 1 to 2 inches of compost, then cardboard, then mulch. Cover crops, another great way to build soil with also not doing too much, activity on your end. You're really letting the plants do all the work. Cover crops are kind of, I don't want to say low quality, that's not the word, but they're cheaper plants because they don't produce as much valuable things like vegetables and things. But they are used as soil builders between seasons. So putting these plants in the ground, fava beans, which you can harvest and eat if you want, vetch, clovers, cowpea, soybeans, sunflowers, flax, ryegrass, just a few of the common cover crops, can be planted in garden beds that you're not really using and you're not really ready to plant in yet, or any areas where you're not really planting in yet, but you're going to, and you want to build that healthy soil. Put some cover crops in the ground now. They're going to do their work. And then when comes spring and you're ready to plant, your soil is going to be a lot healthier in that area. So they're great for unused veggie beds or between season. They do planting anything will protect that soil from damage and erosion. So we really want to get, again, we don't want bare soil. We want to get roots in the soil growing, improving that microbiology, feeding those microbes, holding that soil in place, especially during these rainstorms that we're getting this winter. We want to hold that soil in place, and those living roots from the cover crops will do that. Having plants in the ground feeds soil microbes. Plants and soil microbes have a relationship where the microbes feed the plant and the plant will feed the microbes the sugar that they produce from photosynthesis. So it's a symbiotic relationship down there. So any living roots in the ground will feed those microbes and encourage that life. A lot of cover crops like legumes, like fava beans, will have these nodules on their roots that actually add nitrogen to the soil. So that's really helpful when you are growing very nitrogen thirsty plants like tomatoes, corn, lots of veggies really like that high nitrogen. So planting fava beans or other legumes before you plant those heavy feeders is going to be really beneficial. Cover crops also attract beneficial insects, so you want to keep feeding those beneficial insects all year round. So if you're not planting flowers or veggies, throw some cover crops in the ground to help feed those insects. And as I said, continuing to keep those growing roots in the soil. The plants are covering the soil. It's going to improve the soil structure, and it's going to keep that improve the water holding capacity by really keeping that soil healthy throughout less actively growing times. And then on the same idea of keeping living roots in the soil, planting perennials is a great way to always keep building that soil, because the more roots we have in the ground, the more plants growing, feeding the microbes and receiving nutrients from the microbes, it's going to keep that soil healthy. And it holds that soil in place throughout the year. Having plants in the ground will protect soil from heavy rain and wind. More plants on the ground, whether they're perennials or cover crops, is going to shade the soil to reduce evaporation and reduce weeds. So it's another great way to just reduce weeds, plant more plants. Perennials provide food for birds and bugs throughout the year. We don't want to forget about our beneficial friends during the winter. They still need food, especially if you want them to come back in the spring. So letting perennials go to seed, having them available. Some plants do bloom in the winter, which is going to be good for your bugs as well. Choosing California natives or Mediterranean plants is going to be better for you and better for your plants because they're more adapted to our summer dry climate. They're going to be used to the wetter winters, wetter mild winters, and hot dry summers. And as always, right plant, right place. Choosing the right plant for the space in your garden is going to lead to your plants being less stressed, much happier, and therefore less susceptible to pests. We do want to increase permeable surfaces in the garden. So any way we can allow water to infiltrate throughout the year, whether we're watering our gardens or it's raining. So getting rid of as much concrete and solid surfaces as possible, using pea gravel, brick, stone, things like this to really allow for water to get into our soil everywhere. Because the more water we get into our soil, the more water our soil will be holding throughout the hotter months. And then just a note on buying soil, if you're interested, definitely it's important to have fresh soil, both in your potted plants, your raised beds, and your garden. And so it has lots of great organic options. But just to talk quickly about the differences between what you're looking at, and the SLOAT employees will definitely be able to elaborate a little bit more on this. But a planting mix or garden soil, if you see those words, that's designed to be put directly into the ground with your existing soil. It contains a lot of organic material that's going to increase that the organic matter levels in your soil. It adds nutrients, will help retain water, and there's other materials in the mix to break up harder soil and improve drainage. So you can add it kind of 50-50 depending on the space you have to your existing garden. And then their potting mixes are designed for pots and containers and sometimes raised beds. Again, there's kind of it depends on if the raised bed is sitting on concrete or on soil. But that's designed more to add aeration, increase the water holding capacity, but also allow for drainage in a pot. We don't want water sitting at the bottom of the pot getting all yucky and muddy, and also will allow for better structure and nutrients. It is good to repot containers with new soil once a year or so, or move them when you're moving them to larger containers, adding some fresh soil. So I hope with all that information, we understand that your healthy soil is the literal foundation of a healthy garden. It can provide nutrients, water, structure, life and diversity to your garden. It's going to lead to healthy plants and therefore less pests. And then I'm going to just end on a quick big picture note, because healthy soil can also be used it can be seen as a climate solution, because healthy soil increases plant growth and therefore more photosynthesis. And the process of photosynthesis actually draws carbon out of the air and pumps it down into the soil for those microbes to eat. And then the more, or let's say, the less we disturb the soil, the more carbon stays in the soil. So it really helps to draw down and sequester carbon in the soil, which is much better. We want it more in the soil and less in the air. Healthy soil will reduce chemical inputs, so less fertilizers and less pesticides or synthetic fertilizers and pesticide usage, because we don't need as much. It's going to build resilience against drought and flood. So again, creating that spongy quality of your soil is going to build resilience in extremes. It prevents against soil desertification and erosion. We really want to keep that soil in place. The more sticky, gluey, spongy that soil is, it's going to have less risk of running off or being blown away. And healthy soil can filter out like 80% of urban runoff. So it really reduces the pollutants that enter into our waterways during heavy storms. And here are some online resources for you. This is Our Water, Our World website. We have information on like 18 different pests and other issues online. And this Healthy Garden Fact Sheet will talk more about choosing the right plants for your garden, how to attract beneficials, how to build that healthy soil. And thank you again to Sloat and our sponsors for having me today, for having us today. And I hope that that was beneficial and that you feel good to start building your healthy soil before that spring growing season.
Thank you, Charlotte. That was awesome. Thank you. And Suzanne, too. I know you've been filtering through a bunch of questions. I just want to say a couple things. First, that this is being recorded, and the recording will be available on Tuesday, the 11th, either on Sloat's website under the Learn tab and then videos, or if you sign up, if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, you'll get a notification when the video's up too. And Charlotte's outline and resource handouts will be linked underneath the video on Sloat's website. And then I had a couple quick questions because I know Suzanne's gonna want to chime in, but one thing, it didn't come up, but I know this does come up before, just the difference between mulch and compost. Like the term mulch, I think can be confusing sometimes. So if you could just let us know what you mean by that, that would be awesome.
Yeah, so mulch is anything we're putting on the soil as a protective layer. Compost can be used as a mulch. If you want to layer compost on top of your soil, it's gonna eventually break down and add nutrients and microbes to the soil. So it kind of depends on what you want, what you want to, why you're using mulch. Is it for weed prevention? Is it for water, to reduce the water evaporation? Is it aesthetics? So, and then I hope that was kind of clear. A compost then also is decomposed organic matter. So again, it can be used as a mulch, but it's more of a something you mix into the soil and add to the soil as like a kind of a fertilizer and nutrients. Does that clarify?
Okay.
You can elaborate, Suzanne, if that's not.
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds great.
Yeah. So basically, like you can use bark as a mulch, but
Yes.
you can't use it as a compost. But you can
Yes.
use compost as a mulch and as a compost.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. And then another quick question. This actually came up for me recently, and I can't really remember. But how long, once you do the sheet mulching, how long from the time you put it down to the time you can plant? Is it like 6 or 8 weeks about, or like, does it depend on rain and stuff, or what?
So you can plant, well, there's two options. You can plant as you're sheet mulching. So you can also, if you know you want to get rid of this, like the lawn, but you know you want some plants in there, you can cut out holes in the cardboard as you're laying it down and plant right in it and then just mulch around it. That's one option if you're ready to go. I don't know specifically like, I guess it does depend on rain and how much life is in the soil, how much decomposition is happening. But I would probably guess it would be at least 3 months after sheet mulching that you could dig a hole, but you can always just cut down and dig a hole. It doesn't really matter.
Okay.
But like, yeah, I don't know. I can't really tell
It
you how
also
long it'll-
depends, on how many layers of cardboard you've put
Oh,
down. And so, but you can always plant straight away. And I would recommend 1 gallons and larger. The larger the plant, the easier it is, because that sheet mulching is increasing the grade. So if we are planting a 4-inch, it's just kind of going to get buried. It's not really going to be able to really get into the soil so well without getting buried by the mulch. But when we're looking at 1 gallons or larger, and even ideally 5 gallons or larger, that's it. You can plant at time of sheet mulching.
Okay.
And really anytime after that, you just have to dig out and cut a hole or see what's there.
Yeah, and I would say the sheet mulching is much easier if you are gonna dig into it and to plant something than the weed block. I don't like weed. I don't like weed block at all.
Weed block
So
is a problem.
it's a problem. So this is much more effective than weed block. So
And weed block's usually made of some sort of like plasticky material, right? So
right.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great questions, Jen. We have a couple more really good questions that came up for you, Charlotte. How much mixing is necessary when adding compost to heavy clay soils? Is surface level distribution enough?
Heavy clay, I would probably recommend digging, doing as much disruption to the soil. Usually I don't like disrupting soil, but with clay and trying to regenerate it, you do want to probably break it up a bit. If you can, I don't know how hard the soil is, but if you can dig down 6 to 12 inches and just loosen it up and then add that clay in or that compost in. But then afterwards, after you've, built up that soil, you don't want to disrupt your soil that much usually.
Yeah. Clay soil is when we have clay soil, it's a great opportunity to take advantage of all the benefits of sheet mulching. Of course, that could be a section of the garden where you're just going to sheet mulch it and just let it do its thing for a good 6, 12, 18 months before you plant in it. Also, clay soil is it's a great opportunity now to take advantage of all those cover crops. Cover crops, especially deeply rooted ones, can go down and really break up that clay to get more aeration going on. So I will share that from experience and from hearing from others, everything that Charlotte shared about adding compost to the soil. When we have clay, it could take 5, 10, 20 years of working it every season to the point where you are just so happy and proud of all the work you put in because your soil is just going to be perfect. So it is a little bit more of an effort, but you can achieve beautiful soil.
Do you have to, when you say 6 to 12 inches, so if you have like a big area with clay soil, do you have to cover the whole area with compost and dig down 6 to 12 inches, or can you just do it in the planting holes? Or both?
You can spot amend.
Yeah. Yeah. It
Spot
depends
amend.
on, if you're going to just plant here and there, I would just do it in the areas you're going to plant.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then, sheet mulch around the areas that you haven't planted, or get in the habit of putting cover crops there. But if the intention is not to plant the entire area with plants, spot amending is fine, because over time those plants will grow and expand to their established height and width, and they'll outcompete for any weeds that might sneak in and germinate.
But yeah, and if you can, as Suzanne was saying, if you can build up the soil around those plants in any way with mulch or sheet mulching or cover crops or adding compost here and there, it might not be as, have to go at it as vigorously, but the more healthy soil around your plants, the more, healthy your plants will be.
It's just such a bear to deal with clay soil.
Yeah.
So it's like, if you can just do it in the planting hole, that would be nice. But
Yeah.
anyway,
But you can do it actively in the planting hole and then passively and around.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's what I do in my garden. I have clay soil, so I amend the planting hole, but then I always do a top dressing of compost like twice a year. So
Beautiful.
Okay, well, Patricia's asked, if growing tomatoes in pots, does the soil need to be replaced each year? This is a question that comes up a lot in a lot of our programs, not just the soil program, but in our growing, reducing pests with our, vegetables and all of that.
I would say yes, but I'm going to defer to people who can actually grow tomatoes. I cannot do that in my neighborhood, so I've never done it.
All right, so here's the thing. We want to rotate our crops whenever possible. When we can rotate our crops, it's going to reduce a number of pests that will affect that crop. What happens is the plants, when we're planting, for instance, tomatoes in the same place every year, it's utilizing all of the nutrients, macro and micro. And even though we're fertilizing or adding compost, it's not enough to replenish. So when we're rotating crops, if we then plant the following year lettuces or beans, we're able to get other micronutrients in that root zone that then can favor the tomatoes when they finally make their next round. So if you're growing tomatoes in pots, I probably would, short answer, say yes. Use that soil in that tomato pot for some other area in the garden and put fresh soil, but that can get expensive. So if there's a way that you can get 3 pots, tomato in one, maybe lettuces in another, and maybe beans in a third, and rotate, or whatever the vegetables you like to grow, if you can somehow rotate it, take advantage of cover crops, compost and organic fertilizer, then you won't have to spend so much money on soil every year. But every situation is unique and different. So I know that we don't always have the luxury of being able to have 3 pots to grow in. So hopefully that answered your question. All right, Charlotte, one person said that they have dyed black mulch, and they're curious if it's safe for planting and growing edible plants around that mulch. They've been using the dyed black mulch for a good solid 1.5 to 2 years, and they're just wondering if it's safe.
I believe it's just like a food coloring, so I think it's fine. It is fine. And but I heard that the color can run off onto like patios and things, so just beware of that. But it's safe for around food.
Awesome. And then a question that came in that Heidi had, I think this is a really good one. Can soil change over the years and cause lack of fruit on citrus trees? So she has a problem where she's using organic fertilizers per the Sloat Associates recommendations, but she didn't have any fruit on her citrus trees this time of year, and she has in the past, and she knows this is the time. So what could be going on? Could it be that the soil's changed or something else going on?
I'm interested to hear your opinion on this, but I will say that I've heard my tree included also has not fruited as much this year. So I am guessing it's a drought related thing and not a soil related thing.
From my
But-
personal experience, citruses are heavy feeders, so it's wonderful that the Sloat Associates know this and do recommend good quality fertilizing schedules for those that grow citrus. Just as a side note, I've recently started using the organic citrus spikes. I believe Sloat still sells those. They have really been a game changer for me. They're a lot easier to use because you just replace them every, I think, 3 or 4 months. They do have all of the macro and micronutrients that the citrus needs. And I'm finally seeing some really good green flush and good fruit production on my citrus now that I've changed to the spikes. But I can also share that water is a big part of the situation. So, you mentioned that you've had these citrus for years, but I just also, a couple more questions would come to mind. Or like, how long have they been in that location? How are they getting irrigated? Have you top dressed with compost? I know citrus, because they're heavy feeders, really, really love a winter like a ring around the drip line of compost, even chicken manure underneath a nice fat layer of mulch, just so the winter season, all of those microbes can kind of get integrated and they can, decompose and get more nutrients in around that drip line. And drip line is the key here. If they're really mature citrus, the drip line might be a little farther out than it was maybe even 5, 3, 2 years ago. So really making sure we're focusing around the drip line and that we are providing the citrus with enough fertilizer, because really what I've learned in all the years of working in the industry, it's 1 cup of dry fertilizer to every inch of diameter of that citrus. So if it's a 3-inch diameter, we're looking at 3 cups of fertilizer, and that isn't typically on the bag or box of fertilizer. They're just usually recommending how often to put the fertilizer out, but not necessarily how much. So hopefully that helped. I don't think we really answered your question because there's more questions that we need to ask, but I would look at all of those things, really making sure we're doing a nice deep watering, and we're not watering again until the top 3, 4, even 5 inches of the soil is dried out. All right.
Yeah, and that's awesome. Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say, to answer the specific question, soil can change over time, but not in one season. But I think it's more the nutrients that can change. So go ahead. Sorry, Jen.
Oh, just that's also good for any other fruit trees too. They like that compost, put down around now, basically. So.
And then there was one more question from Denise. She mentioned she had a massive aphid infestation to the point of having to pull the plants out last year. And she's just curious if she's going to be faced with that problem again this year in her raised beds. I had typed out a reply just saying that aphids are seasonal. They really start to come out when the weather warms up, but they do not necessarily overwinter in the soil. However, would you like to speak a little bit more in regards to aphids and plant health and ecology of the garden?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, just making sure that your plants are as healthy as possible before the spring, when the aphids are definitely going to come. As Susanna said, they're definitely going to show up. They always come in spring. If you can get your plants as healthy as possible now, by especially boosting that soil now, will make your plants more able to fight off the infestations. Also increasing the diversity of plants in the garden to also invite those good bugs, because aphids are delicious food for ladybugs, and some other beneficial insects. So increasing the diversity of the plants, and also, as we mentioned on this presentation, how are you fertilizing? If you're using the synthetic high nitrogen fertilizers, maybe consider switching to an organic fertilizer. You will get less quick flush of new growth, which is very attractive to aphids. You'll still get growth, but it'll just be at the speed that the plant is ready for. And if you do get a larger infestation of aphids, you can just try pruning out like the really heavy infested branches, blasting the plant off with the stream of water to start, and then hopefully that can at least cut back on the population.
All right, well, that was awesome. And Charlotte, thank you so much for all that information, and Suzanne too, for your expertise with the questions and everything. I love when you guys are both here. I just want to talk to you for like hours.
So fun.
It's so fun. What was I going to say? Oh yeah, just a reminder that the recording will be available on Tuesday, the 11th. And also that our next class will be with Suzanne on Wednesday at 5 p.m. And then also we've taken deeper dives into fertilizer and water wise, and like, what else have we done? I mean, there's like a bunch. What?
IPM,
right?
Yeah.
So there's specific classes available. The recordings are available for you to watch. And it's on Sloat's website, or it's on our YouTube, and you can filter through with subject or whatnot. And so there's a ton of information there. And like I said, the lineup so far for this year, we've got a lot of fun upcoming classes. So definitely check out our website for classes in the future. Thank you both so much. I hope everybody has a wonderful Saturday. I think the sun's trying to come out, so maybe get out for a hike or something. Thank you both, and I guess we'll see you both on Wednesday.
Yeah.
So have a great weekend. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Jen.